Hi, I'm Abby, I have a lot of records, and this is Vinyl Monday. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. Vinyl Monday is the who, what, when, where, why, and how do I feel about classic albums in my collection. If TV show length episodes aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday in 60 seconds here on my channel, over on my Instagram, as well as TikTok. I hope you lot had a nice break for Easter because I certainly did not have a break. My first Patreon exclusive monthly vinyl collection update went up for one. The scope of my music taste goes way beyond what I get to cover on this show. I had like Knockmistium and Sabrina Carpenter in the same video. So with these monthly updates, different from the big giant ones I do on this channel from time to time, I'll get to talk about so many amazing albums that I'd never get to feature on the show otherwise. If you should choose to do so, it's never mandatory. I have one Patreon tier. It gives a little extra support to what I do and covers my ass when the YouTube copyright gods decide to smite me. As far as my writing goes, my Like a Ship Without a Sail review went up, as did a Donovan in the 60s albums roundup. All of that went up for Groovy Music Club. My Geese Live at Third Man Records review went up on Tracking Angle, and on the latest episode of the Dolls podcast, we got to interview LA punk legend Jenny Shore. She tells her wild stories of being in the band Backstage Pass, running the Straitjacket Boutique, not to mention she's also the author of All Roads Lead to Punk. This is one of my favorite episodes we've ever put together. You do not want to miss this. Jenny, thank you so much for coming on our show. The Dolls podcast is available wherever you stream your podcasts. As always, Apple and Spotify are linked in the description. This week, we're featuring a known Velvet Underground devotee, which is funny when you consider he's the Velvet Underground of people. All the more remarkable when you note he didn't consider himself a musician. This week's albums are Brian Eno, Here Come the Warm Jets, and Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy. Congrats if you guessed these ones. Remember, if you want to play along, all you gotta do is check out my post tab. That's where I post the hints to what the next album's gonna be. I make announcements, I host polls, you can find all of that on my channel. And if you so choose, you can always read the written versions of my reviews on my website, linked in the description. Alright, since Warm Jets came out first, I think it makes sense to start with this one. Let's take the plastic off. So my copy of Warm Jets is from sometime in its release year, 1974. It's a UK copy on Island Records. At least that's what the labels on the discs are telling me. Both my copies of Warm Jets and Taking Tiger Mountain were generous gifts from a subscriber. This is an album I would not have found in the US, let alone in the record store drought I'm in. Thank you, kind stranger. Now let's talk about this cover art. The Here Come the Warm Jets cover was designed by CCS Associates, who are also responsible for Roxy Music's covers, and that wasn't so bad to get out, the illustration on the cover of ELP's Tarkus. Eno obscures himself on the Warm Jets cover, preferring to appear in a cameo on the front and his reflection in the mirror on the back. Now my crazy blue eyeshadow pink lipstick situation makes a little bit more sense. I love the visual interest in the Warm Jets cover. There's a lot going on and you can't really tell what most of it is. Like down here, this looks like maybe a pincher, or maybe the stems from this plant. Down here, this raunchy set of playing cards. That's all you need to know about the title. On Here Come the Warm Jets, we have Brian Eno on vocals, electric larynx, snake guitar, synths, and treatments. He is backed by a rotating cast of characters, including but not limited to Phil Manzanera, Ace Spedding, and Robert Fripp on electric guitar, Andy McKay on saxophone and keys, Lloyd Watson on slide guitar, Busta Cherry Jones, Paul Rudolph, Bill McCormick, and John Wetton on bass, and Simon King, Marty Simon, and Paul Thompson on drums and percussion. Here Come the Warm Jets was produced by Brian Eno. Roll transition. For over half a century now, there's been this idea that, as best phrased by Lester Bangs, Eno is, quote, some flipped-out technological whiz or art school dilettante. I'll admit, I felt like I was chasing my own ass the whole writing process. How do you choose to write about the single most productive artist of the 1970s who released no less than 2 albums a year for the whole decade, let alone all the stuff he produced for other people, but sold less than 50,000 copies of each LP, or a serious composer who was at one point a pop star? How do you talk about the creative processes of an artist who abandoned the medium of painting because there was too large a gap between the concept and the execution, who then talks about spending days in the studio producing one sound in the very same interview? How do you talk about the guy who usurped Eric Clapton as God, and how the do you talk about all of that when it applies to the same person? He's called himself an idiot savant. He doesn't even think himself to be a musician. My goal with this episode, and its screwy format, which you will be subject to soon, is to examine the creative processes of Brian Eno through these 2 records. I'll point out where the timelines overlap, where his methods differ, and the core elements of his philosophy. Where do his compositions as Eno solo begin? A disastrous Roxy Music tour for Your Pleasure resulted in Eno quitting the band in mid-1973. There were tensions building behind the scenes. Brian Ferry did not like that Roxy was just as much seen as Brian with an I's project as it was Brian with a Y's. In interview with Jeff Brown for The Melody Maker in November of 1973, Eno asserts that Roxy are a great band and he loves their work, but, quote, what it lacks for me is one of the most important elements of my musical life, which is insanity. I'm interested in things being absurd. You and me both, buddy. With Roxy's fame, there was less time and space for Eno to experiment. In this interview, he emphasizes there was no bad blood, because he joined by accident in the first place. Andy McKay said he knew a guy who worked with synthesizers, and that guy was Brian Eno, but Eno had never touched a synth in his life. In the end, Roxy just wasn't Brian's end goal the way it was Brian's. I don't think any of us expected to be successful for a start. Well, Brian did, I suppose, but for the rest of us, it was still kind of an art event type of thing. I don't think anyone would have been surprised or even especially disappointed if, after a year, it all folded up. In no rush to be in another band, Eno wants to go avant-garde. He's interested in the processes of John Cage, George Brecht, Morton Feldman, and Lamont Young. To Nick Kent for the NME, he stated his game plan was to, quote, record as much as possible with as many different people as possible. Record as much as possible with as many people as possible he did. Shortly after leaving Roxy and doing a little work for Robert Wyatt's new group Matching Mole, Eno links up with his new bestie, Robert Fripp. They put out No Pussyfooting in 1973. I am saving discussion about this album for another day. In that Melody Maker interview, Eno predicted, quote, I shall be seen as a rock and roll revivalist in a funny way, because the thing that people miss when they do their rock revival rubbish is the fact that early rock music was, in a lot of cases, the product of incompetence, not competence. When talking about the rock and rollers, he said there's a misconception that these people were brilliant musicians, and they aren't. They were brilliant musicians in the spiritual sense. They knew what the physical function of music was. This may seem like one one of Eno's signature interview tangents. I have never had to use quite as many ellipses in the quotes as I did this week. But this opens the door to how Eno views making music. Despite ambling on his VCS-3 and AKS, he couldn't play an instrument. When asked if it was ever inconvenient that he couldn't read music, he describes one or two occasions where he was caught without his tape recorder and an idea slipped away. On those very rare occasions, I've thought, God, if only I could write this down. But in fact, quite a lot of what I do has to do with sound texture. And you can't notate that anyway. Instead of writing, Eno would record himself picking out little things on instruments he couldn't really play, and he'd run that through his various electronics and tape recorders. At one point, he had 31 tape recorders. He was obsessed with how these things worked. He'd bring in guest musicians to flesh things out. All tracks would be overdubbed to hell, and he'd repeat that process until he was satisfied. If you're familiar with Holger Czukay's process, engineering Can's Tago Mago, this will ring some bells. Working like this was expensive for Can, and it was expensive for Eno too. Part of why he left Roxy was that he felt weird taking up so much studio time on the band's tab to chase one sound. Sometimes it'd take a whole day. And sometimes he couldn't get that sound at all. Best to strike it out on his own to experiment like this. There's also a lot of risk-taking inherently involved. A certain degree of Eno's work is left up to chance. Think of what Marcel Duchamp said. Your chance is not the same as my chance, just as your throw of the dice will rarely be the same as mine. Eno reinforced this by never writing down what settings he used on any given synth. Quote, I know myself well enough that if I had a stock of fabulous sounds, I would just always use them. I wouldn't bother to find new ones. There are a lot of things I've done before that I couldn't do again, even if I wanted to. He also took a big risk by putting together musicians who would never work with each other otherwise. I got them together merely because I want to see what happens when you combine different identities like that, and you allow them to compete. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. Smush 16 incompatible personalities into Island Studios in September of 1973 to cut 10 songs in 12 days with little to no framework. Use the friction between the guys and the breakdown of perceived comfort zones to make the work great, and this is how Here Come the Warm Jets was made. Now, since Eno couldn't write music, he had to use other means to communicate what he wanted out of these players. He would use adjectives, gestures, and occasionally little dance moves. He found this worked best with the bassists, as there's a natural bodily rhythm to what they do. The lyrics came last. Eno would listen to the backing track, draw a chart of where singing would slot in best, and not unlike John Lennon advising George Harrison to get the song down as soon as inspiration struck, Eno would sing nonsense syllables, which he'd work into lyrics later. These are less lyrics and more something for Eno's voice to do within the compositions, like Damo Suzuki for Can. Filmmaker Alphonse Sininger was following Eno around at the time, documenting all of these wacky processes. It becomes his 30-minute Eno doc. It crops up on YouTube once in a blue moon. I'm probably not going to be able to feature it here if I do find it, but it's the best visual documentation we have on what Eno's life was like and what the studio looked like while making Here Come the Warm Jets. Pause! Now, before we march ahead to the rest of what Eno was up to in the spring of 1974, we have to flash back. Oh, you're gonna get mad at me if I don't do the hee-ha-hoo-ha-ha? Okay, where the f*** is it? Alright, let's take the plastic off. This is the Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy chapter of the video, by the way. Right, back to what I was saying. Before we march on to June 1st, 1974, we have to flash back to 1969, when Eno joined an ensemble called the Portsmouth Sinfonia. Any old school Tumblr denizens recognize this? Given that, there's this misconception that the Sinfonia was an orchestra specifically for non-musicians. It being a professional orchestra who all swapped instruments with each other for a funny finale is also a common myth. The Portsmouth Sinfonia filmed around the Portsmouth College of Art. Some could play their instruments, some couldn't. Some could read music, some couldn't. But, as Melody Maker described, there seemed to be more can'ts than cans. As Abby Smith for The Wire explained, the Sinfonia falls somewhere on the Fluxus family tree for the inherent absurdity and randomness of the final product. This could also be early performance art, as there was an element of audience participation. Their goal was to take art world elitism by the belt loops and pants it, and by God did they do it. The same year they guested on Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy, the Portsmouth Sinfonia performed at the fucking Royal Albert Hall. Eno's time in the Sinfonia, he played the clarinet, got him comfortable with the idea of not knowing, to the degree at which he'd put himself on instruments he didn't know how to play in the studio. Okay, back to the spring of 1974. Never one to put his feet up for long, Eno is out of the frying pan and into the fire. He is drafted to perform at the Rainbow Theatre with Kevin Ayers of the Soft Machine and ex-Velvets John Cale and Nico, with special guest the Tubular Bells guy, Mike Oldfield. Kevin was the one who put all this together. This was more of a Kevin project than anything. John was producing Nico's The End at the time. 2 performances of Eno's songs made the cut for the live record. Those were Driving Me Backwards and Babies on Fire. Eno described their Babies on Fire as incredibly out of tune. So out of tune you wouldn't believe it, but it sounds fantastic. There's a riff between the guitar and one of the bassists, and they're so out of tune it sounds like cellos. Amazing! You wouldn't have thought of making it, in fact. It's such a bizarre sound. Can't say I'm as crazy about it as Eno, but okay. This is another example of a central point in Eno's philosophy. Mistakes aren't really mistakes. They're viable paths to follow for the sake of the creative process. This is because players chase ideas they never would otherwise. Put a pin in this for later. This Rainbow Theatre group was a one-off gig, as John caught his wife f***ing Kevin the night before. However, badly it ended, resulted in Eno and Phil Manzanera lending a hand to John's Fear LP. Eno also introduced John to Judy Nylon. And it got Eno thinking, what if, instead of having like 5 bassists working on a record at a time, what if I had a set group of fewer musicians on my next LP? He drafts up a group with himself, Phil Manzanera, Brian Turrington on bass, Freddie Smith on drums, and Robert Wyatt on percussion and backing vocals. Eno was working on Wyatt's Rock Bottom at the time. So a brief recap. Eno is working on The End, John Cale, Robert Wyatt, and himself. At the same time, he's got his eye on what's going on out in New York. There's this club, CBGB's, that's home to some promising young new talent, including the Patti Smith Group, the Ramones, and the band Eno was interested in, television. Eno offered to produce television, but in a decision that probably haunted Tom Verlaine for the rest of his life, he said no. And since the Tiger Mountain crew were in Island Studios at the same time as Genesis, Eno worked on The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. As kind of a thank you, Phil Collins plays on Mother Whale Eyeless. Now you may be wondering, how the hell did Eno do all of this at the same time and come out in one piece? He low-key didn't, because he didn't give himself time to eat. Eno worked himself sick back in November of 1973. He was so sick he couldn't eat, which made him sicker. It was a vicious cycle. That's why he was so skinny in the 70s. Everybody's in the right place at the right time to make all of these records, and a certain degree is left up to chance. Oh, the oblique strategies of it all. The idea of making a game that deliberately puts the artist outside their comfort zone might have come from a project Eno and his classmates were assigned back in art school. Oblique Strategies is a card game Eno designed with artist Peter Schmidt. did this cover. Schmidt made a beta version of the game back in 1970 to use in his own studio. The game includes cards with instructions such as amplify the most embarrassing detail, subtract the most important part, and perhaps the most famous card, honor thy mistake as intention. Everybody gets stuck sometimes, even people who are comfortable with the idea of not knowing. Human nature is to figure out what you're gonna do and then do it. You don't decide to cut the apple in the middle of cutting the apple. You decide when you pull the knife out of the drawer carefully and by its handle. Right? Even Brian Eno finds himself getting stuck in the studio. He would get so focused on one thing that he'd forget all the great ideas he came up with off the clock. He'd just be going through the motions, and that's no way to work when your outcome is your creative process. So whenever he got stuck, he'd pull a card from Oblique Strategies and act it out. As he described in an interview with Alan Jones, it forced him to try something, even if he knew it wasn't going to work. Quote, I used the cards as a way of jolting myself back into thinking about what I was doing. Oblique Strategies didn't hit the market until 1975, so Eno was his own playtester making Taking Tiger Mountain. Speaking of cards, the Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy title came from a pack of postcards depicting the Maoist opera of the same name. Quote, I'm not a Maoist or any of that. If anything, I'm anti-Maoist. Strategy interests me because it deals with the interaction of systems, which is what my interest in music is, really. Quote, I was interested in combining that very naive and crude form of basic expression with an extremely complex concept like Tiger Mountain. So Taking Tiger Mountain has nothing to do with Taking Tiger Mountain, let alone China or communism. Though the lyrics were still nonsense, they weren't placeholders anymore. Now they were written out of panic. Eno wrote the lyrics to the entirety of Taking Tiger Mountain in all of 15 minutes. This was so he didn't give himself the time to feel weird or self-conscious about what he was singing. Quote, the thing about writing fast is that you don't guard yourself. All of this begs the question, why all of these diversions? Why did Eno make it so hard for himself? It's not about getting from point A to point B in the shortest distance. In his mind, if you know where you're going and exactly how to get there, you might as well not go in the first place. The track listing of Here Come the Warm Jets, Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy, goes as follows. Opening up side 1 of Here Come the Warm Jets, we have Needle in the Camel's Eye, followed by the Paw Paw Negro Blowtorch. Then Baby's on Fire, next Cindy Tells Me, and side 1 closes with Driving Me Backwards. Opening up side 2, we have On Some Faraway Beach, followed by Blank Frank. Then Dead Finks Don't Talk, next Some of Them Are Old, and the album closes with the title track, Here Come the Warm Jets. Opening up Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy, we have Burning Airlines Give You So Much More, followed by Back in Judy's Jungle. Then The Fat Lady of Limburg, next Mother Whale Eyeless, and side 1 closes with The Great Pretender. Opening up side 2, we have Third Uncle, followed by Put a Straw Under Baby. Then The True Wheel, next China My China, and the album closes with Taking Tiger Mountain. Here Come the Warm Jets was released sometime in the first 3 months of 1974. The Melody Maker interview gives us the date of January 11th, but it is never that simple. Warm Jets made its debut UK chart appearance the week ending March 9th. It peaked at number 26 that first week, which leads me to believe it sold a lot in pre-orders from Roxy fans, and then sales trickled off from there. Charts used to be announced on the Tuesday, which would have been March 5th. Given records were, and still are, typically released on the Fridays and all of the above context clues, we can safely guess that Here Come the Warm Jets was released on March 1st. I have no idea why Wikipedia gives a date in early February. This is straight up wrong. Maybe they got it from Eno playing his John Peel session on February 26th. who knows? Lester Bangs raved about Warm Jets in Cream, though he thought side 2 meandered. Quote, "The best of it still stuns and fries me every time I slap it on. Side 1 has one of the most perfect lineups in years, solid and throbbing Primitivo all the way, but with the strangest increment of avant-gardings." He likens it to a cross between Slade and known Bangs fave, The Marble Index, and feels a little VU energy benefiting from better production. I also love this description by Ed Neha for Circus. He pins the music as, quote, "an eerie realm fluctuating somewhere between Fantasia and early 60s British pop." Cynthia Dagnall was positive in her Eno feature for Rolling Stone, calling it a very compelling experiment in controlled chaos, and by his own self-dictated standards, a near success. I wish I could find the context for this quote, but this is one of those features that Rolling Stone have inexplicably chosen not to archive. I love when contributors to the same publication with conflicting opinions on an album engage in a little sparring in their respective reviews. We saw this with Stephen Davis and Timothy Ferris over Lou Reed's Berlin. And it happens again over Warm Jets. Gordon Fletcher dissents. He frames Eno as part of, quote, "a cult of marginal musicians bent on doing weird things to the traditional pop format for the sake of being trendy or weird for weird's sake." He names Elton John and Roxy Music as a couple offenders. Eno writes weird songs, but their weirdness is more silly than puzzling. God forbid someone be silly. Quote, "his record is annoying because it doesn't do anything. The songs aren't strong enough individually or collectively to merit more than a passing listen. When it does do something, Gordon claims it's derivative. Camel's Eye sounds like Del Shannon, apparently. Some of them are Old's harmonies, are inspired by the Four Freshmen, and perhaps Gordon's most baffling observation, he claims Faraway Beach, Blank Frank, and Dead Finks quote extensively from the Beatles' Abbey Road? Others will hopefully join this writer in taking exception to this insane divergence of styles and wish that the next time Eno makes an album, he will attempt to structure his work, rather than throw together the first 10 things that come to mind. Save for Fripp's solo on Babies on Fire, Warm Jets is one note and, quote, "the listener must kick himself for blowing $5 on this baloney." God, do I wish you could buy an Eno album for $5 these days. Gordon does make one valid point, though. About Eno's treatment of overdubbing by guest musicians, he says, quote, "the end product of his efforts would have to be classed as indiscernible." Taking Tiger Mountain was for sure released in November of 1974. Rolling Stone passed on reviewing it. I think this was because it didn't chart in the UK or the US, but it got a lot of quippy, fun reviews from a lot of different writers. Christgau compared Tiger Mountain to Brian Ferry's current output, favoring Eno for his less by-the-book romanticism and playful oddness. Henry Edwards, writing for After Dark, called it a, quote, "gleeful combination of wit and insanity." Ed Neha for Circus called it a Dadaist tour de force, quote, "lampooning and integrating every kind of music conceivable." And Lester Bangs liked this even more than he did Warm Jets. To him it was, quote, "endlessly intricate, teeming with so many unheard of inspirations that it may be another 10 years before the rest of rock catches up. And the last time I made so fulsome with the superlatives, I was reviewing Miles Davis's In a Silent Way, so listen before you laugh." He repeated this sentiment in an unpublished 1979 book chapter on Eno. It appeared in pieces in Musician magazine, but wasn't posted in full until 2003, when the editor of Mainline's Blood Feast, John Morthland, handed it over to the More Dark Than Shark fan site. If you have the time to read all 4 parts of it, it is fascinating. Anyway, the quote, "rich textures, rhythms dancing against each other, and exotic synthesizer treatments of standard rock instrumentation revealed that Eno had already mastered his ultimate instrument, the recording studio. As the overdubs pile up in Byzantine splendor, it's easy to forget that he made this awesome tapestry with a lineup of guitar, bass, drums, and percussion, Tiger Mountain demonstrated what riches may be mined from the simplest musical materials. Third Uncle inspired artist Richard Mills's series inspired by Eno's songs. This eventually became the book More Dark Than Shark. Warm Jets was really the album that kicked him in the chest, though, or as he described it, it had the same stunning effect as if one is hit on the bridge of one's nose by the edge of a brick. Mills felt there wasn't much going on in music in 1974, and he was right in a way. It was definitely a weird year, with King Crimson ending their original run, not original lineup, important fucking distinction. ELP on hiatus, yes, blowing themselves up with Topographic Oceans, and Peter Gabriel leaving Genesis. Prog in the mainstream was effectively done. Heavy rock veered into stadium excess, and to Eno at least, glam was played out. So he ditches the makeup, cuts his hair, and moves on to his next creative venture. Another Green World. I'm not gonna spend much time on the influence of Eno in this video because we'd be here for another fucking 20 minutes, and I think it would be better suited to, like, a Bowie's Berlin trilogy project anyway. But I will say this. Think of the coolest person you knew between the years of 1974 and 1982. Considering the demographics of this channel, most of you were alive during those years. All of the music they listened to was either made, produced, or influenced by Brian Eno. So, what do I think of Here Come the Warm Jets? I have to disagree with Gordon Fletcher on Warm Jets. This record is not tepid. There is always something happening on it. Looking back on Warm Jets in 1979, Eno said, "I was just in a mad mood, really, when I did it, and also had this feeling of incredible freedom. You can feel it. Warm Jets is teeming with energy." I feel a lot of critics miss the sense of play that makes Eno's work of this period. Like doing a little dance to show the players what feel their part should have. Across both Warm Jets and Taking Tiger Mountain, Eno is the ultimate example of the outcome is not the project. It's not about the destination, it's what happens on the way. Mills said, quote, "Eno's lyrics intrigued me as they did not, on the whole, fall into any of the usual categories of popular music, but reflected his diverse interests, such as spontaneous human combustion, dream notation, random associations, and phenomena in general. His lyrics are not the normal throwaway lines. Their randomness, nonsense, and contradictory feel are the appealing thing that never fails to excite, incite, amuse, and confuse me." Eno feels the same. Camel's Eye was, quote, "written in less time than it takes to sing, and even he admitted he never really understood it. The title came from the guitar tone, which he likened to a cloud of needles." I don't care if it would defeat the purpose of this record, Camel's Eye should have been a hit. This was tailor-made for radio waves ruled by T-Rex and Ziggy Stardust era Bowie. Camel's Eye wastes no time setting the tone for Warm Jets. Eno's production style tangles up its layers. There's a thick application of reverb on his vocals, a melodic bass line, and slightly out of sync drum tracks across the left and right channels. And yes, that thin, sharp, winding riff, it all churns together around Eno's voice, vaguely anthemic like any good 70s rocker. If you can make out what he's saying with everything else going on, it feels like an opening theme for a coming-of-age film about a lonely, outcast teen, the type who reads Cream magazine and buys Brian Eno records. Best not to pore over the pages and just roll with the punches. Why ask why? For the by and by and by, all mysteries are just more needles in the camel's eye. This is the thesis statement of Here Come the Warm Jets. You don't need sensible lyrics to make great pop music. You don't even need complex music, though the production is dense, the guitar solo is just the major scale. Blowtorch is based on the story of A.W. Underwood from Paw Paw, Michigan, who could apparently breathe fire. Eno writes from the point of view of his lover. How can you get close to a man who would literally set you on fire? Mr. Blowtorch's lover has a lover. The plot thickens. Eno sings, my, like a nagging girlfriend, complaining that we're treating each other like strangers. One love has gone cold. Her loving just a fable that we try with passion to recall. The other, literally too hot to handle. Eno peacocks all over the swaggering Blowtorch. There's lots of vibrato, falsetto, and talk singing. The churning riff and hip-swaying rhythm section are so close to being standard issue, but then Eno drops in what I can only describe as posting on synth. It's like someone spilled their coffee on R2-D2. The whirring synth segue into the next song. Clearly we're meeting Eno at a very pyromaniac time in his life. I don't know how Eno did it, but this is the catchiest record we've had on the show since Badfinger. Baby's on Fire, Better Throw Her in the Water is an unbelievable hook. Just that much more memorable thanks to the bratty, nasally effect Eno adopts. I was walking around my house last week, putting away the dishes and the like, singing Baby's on Fire. To Melody Maker in 1974, Eno described Baby's on Fire as very economical, and that interests me at the moment when song structures are so complex in general that one can write what I think are interesting songs without that kind of complexity. I don't have to rely on the complexity of the structure for the interest of the songs. I completely agree with the artist's assessment. The song's bottomless depth comes from its simplicity. The anxious bass, the cymbal-focused drums, the shrill droning synths in the back, and all of 2 chords. Baby's on Fire's tension never resolves. Fripp only raises the temperature with his solo. Consider Fripp's playing style at the moment in like 1973-74. Before I read the album credits, I had no idea Fripp was playing on this. This is so unlike him. The double tracking and soaring flourishes, that's not the vocabulary he's speaking in at the moment. This is a testament to Eno's creative process, forcing this guy out of his comfort zone. The Baby's on Fire solo is bossy, muscular, entirely befitting to the unrelenting tension of the song, and damn near perfectly structured. It's funny Eno predicted he'd be called some rock and roll revivalist. The only song on Warm Jets I could comfortably ascribe that label to is Cindy Tells Me. It reminds me of a Shangri-La's song in hot pink satin and latex instead of black leather and capris, with the feathery in the background and plinking piano. It's all turned on its side with the hefty phasing of the guitar. It's retro-futuristic, like something the Jetsons might hear on their flying car radios. Cindy Tells Me is a really interesting set of lyrics. This is a Stepford wife-like character, disenchanted by modern womanhood. Some are homemakers, some join the workforce. That's what they want, and that's what they choose. Some are dissatisfied with being single girls, confused by all their new freedoms. Others stew on their wasted potential. Some of them lose, and some of them lose. We've gone from the offensive simplicity of Baby's on Fire to the oppressive simplicity of Driving Me Backwards. What a spectacular sense of dread. Only 3 chords, each of them separated by just 1 note. I do love the vibe of Driving Me Backwards. It's paranoid and makes your skin crawl. That's the point in the mob movie where the car door locks behind the lackey and he realizes he's not just going for a nice drive at night by the riverbank. Or the penultimate twist in the psychological thriller when you realize the protagonist was the serial killer all along. Eno gives a belabored delivery, like a man at the end of his tether. This song might predict one of the most famous Oblique Strategies cards. Repetition is a form of change. The seesawing grinds away for the whole 5 minutes, rising in volume until the space between your ears rattles. This track in particular is crazy on my surround sound. I have to say, I prefer Driving Me Backwards on June 1st, 1974. At least 2 people on that stage hated each other's guts and were this close to beating the shit out of each other right then and there while the German lady stood in the back playing her creepy harmonium. It's barely held together. That Driving Me Backwards and John Cale's Heartbreak Hotel, boy do they tell a story. On a record with so many baffling, offbeat, intentionally ugly moments and indecipherable lyrics, On Some Faraway Beach is simply gorgeous. Eno plucks out a simple line on piano you swear you've heard it somewhere before. The warm buzz of the high-flying, plainer guitar solo, it could be vaguely anthemic like Camel's Eye, but I feel more a sense of relief. Some Faraway Beach is what we all want in the end. To go out surrounded by that warmth, comfort, and love we felt in our childhood. Maybe you haven't felt that love from the universe since then. Eno lays out the best case scenario. Given the chance, I'll die like a baby on some faraway beach. His soul returns to nature. Unlikely I'll be remembered. As the tide brushes sand in my eyes, I'll drift away. For an album loaded with intentionally disjointed, detached lyrics, this is revealing for Eno. The swirling arrangement and backing vocals wash away with the tide, and we're left with the counter melody on piano. Beautiful. Blank Frank is like sticking the Rolling Stones recording of Not Fade Away in front of a funhouse mirror. Eno takes the white boy blues craze that swept Britain when he was in his art school years and twists it into a pretzel. Blank Frank, with memory as cold as an iceberg, who speaks only in proverbs, twists his face into a yellow, foul-breathed smile. The guitar solo is insane, by the way. I know there's a lot more unhinged-ery going on surrounding it, but this sounds like something Sonic Youth might have screwed into their music in the late 80s. The title of Dead Finks Don't Talk is a play on Burroughs' Dead Fingers Talk. Eno said this one was about, quote, being ambitious and smarmy at the same time. Interesting when you consider this is the only track on the album to feature Paul Thompson on drums, and Eno imitates Brian Ferry on the line, "As you peck your way up there." Well, Gary Parsons said it was a Brian Ferry impression. It sounds a lot more like my impression of Nick Cave. Eno gives, "Oh cheeky cheeky, oh naughty sneaky, you're so perceptive." A biting, sarcastic tone. He sings, "Oh you headless chicken, can those poor teeth take so much kicking?" The bleak, robotic, taunting ha-ha-has in the background. Maybe the breakup wasn't as amicable as he asserted. Some of them are old, serves as a companion piece to On Some Faraway Beach. Both are wistful, oddly tender moments on an irreverent and zany album. They make each other make sense. I'm sure this song is about some other thing with some bizarro Eno story attached, but looking at these lyrics, I do feel it's a companion to On Some Faraway Beach. We all hope to simply wash away to whatever lies beyond this mortal plane, feeling no anxieties about what fate awaits us on the other side. Some of them are old is the reality of dying. It's human nature to be scared, especially of being forgotten by those people come and go and forget to close the door, and they leave their stains and cigarette butts trampled on the floor, and when they do, remember me. You can't control what or who happens to you, or when you leave your dear Lucy or Polly Jean or whatever her name is. You can only control how you react to it. Some of them are old, some of them are new, some of them will turn up when you least expect them to, and when they do, Eno pleads, "Remember me." That's my favorite line on both albums right there. Even oddball albums have heart. Nick Kent likened the title track to Telstar. just don't hear it. It's a yearning end to the surrealist film that is Here Come the Warm Jets. Note the drum tracks and fuzzy guitar that start in sync and slowly wander astray, barely meeting again in the end. Not unlike the screwy drums of Camel's Eye. Eno knows how to start a record and he knows how to finish one. Here Come the Warm Jets doesn't quite anticipate punk, though I do hear Television's DNA on this thing. He anticipates post-punk, Eno's own turn towards minimalist music in the mid to late 1970s, and the broader, kitschy rock and roll revival thing moving into the 80s. It's interesting to note that a lot of the same musicians that showed up for Warm Jets also lent themselves to Phil Manzanera's solo album, Diamond Head, is nothing like Warm Jets, and yet it sounds so of its time. This can be distinctly placed in and around the music of 1974 in a way that other Eno albums can't be pinned to their respective times. Now for Taking Tiger Mountain. Others see this as an extension of Warm Jets. I don't think so. It's more minimal in its production and more exploratory with the arrangements and content. Tiger Mountain also lets Phil Manzanera do more. He's using all sorts of different guitar tones and textures. There's 3 or 4 unique ones on Burning Airlines Give You So Much More alone. When I got back home, I found a message on the floor. Sweet Regina's gone to China, cross-legged on the floor. There are 2 ships passing in the night. They don't see each other come or leave. So he wonders, is she having her morning tea? Is she on some spy mission, wearing microphones in her wig and wearing a false beard as a disguise? Has she run off to Japan to get married? Eno peers in at the frivolous worries of the first-class traveling set. One could say it's music for airports. I love this riff. I love it. It's stupidly simple, it's just a scale, but it's the punchiest element of the arrangement. Burning Airlines lays out the sonic palette Eno will be primarily using on Taking Tiger Mountain. Keyboards, piano accents, and this one is huge, the drum machine. Sly Stone made heavy use of the drum machine on his 1971 LP, There's a Riot Going On. His 73 LP uses it a lot as well. Any 70s record that uses the drum machine just slingshots the thing into the future. This combination of guitars, keyboards, and drum machine gets stuck in my head like a motherfucker. Where Warm Jets had that lingering glam identity, as soon as you put on Tiger Mountain, you know that this is a Brian Eno record independent of anything else. The whistling over top of Back in Judy's Jungle.
He was chosen because he was dumb. 7 because
The only reason I know that is because it's one of my dad's favorite movies, and it was one of like 6 DVDs he would constantly watch. It was River Kwai, the entirety of Gunsmoke, and The Dirty Dozen. Burned into my brain. Judy's Jungle is a peculiar song. It carries on with Tiger Mountain's sonic vocabulary, chiming keys, playful guitar, and a waltz with a belly full of rye. Judy masks the horrors of, or even satirizes, the war machine, while the upper class get to jet off to Japan and fantasize themselves on a spy mission. The dumb, blind, and mute are shipped off to the jungle. The narrator was picked because he was mean, number 13 picked for his bad luck, and another with cauliflower ear for the birds. Clearly there's this idea that if you lump all these misfits together, they'll make one useful soldier. These are just bodies to put out. The backing vocal on So Kind has no reason to be that funny. Eno must have pulled the card that said, sing it squiggly. The Fat Lady of Limburg tips its hat to John Cage with some prepared piano. Limburg had a mental institution, so the Fat Lady is supposed to be one of its residents. Is she some kind of expert, as Eno phrased it? Is her sense of taste really so good that she can pick out samples that are otherwise indistinguishable from each other? Or is this the guards and nurses having a laugh amongst each other about this quack who laid a big black egg? This likely fabricated story of her past. That's what we're paid for. To listen to the Fat Lady's rambling. I didn't get breathtaking Tiger Mountain when I first listened to it back when I was writing that Lamb episode. I thought it was strange, but the one track I knew I could get down with was Mother Whale Eyeless. It has this topsy-turvy funk appeal, but not the same way Talking Heads are topsy-turvy funk. Eno did it his own way, with a perfect balance of asymmetrical elements. The synths blip like a radar, the urgent two-note bass line, and Eno's faraway voice. He sounds like he's singing through a pane of glass. We enter Mother Whale Eyeless's narrative at a lull in activity. I can think of nowhere I would rather be, reading morning papers, drinking morning tea. Listen to how Eno and company kick the story into gear. The drums and percussive piano bash into the fray on the words "clutches the tray." If you don't get caught up in another minimal, addictive riff slung by Eno and Phil, it's difficult not to pay attention to the lyrics. We start in a kitchen sink drama, then shock, awe, betrayal. Living so close to danger, even your friends are strangers. Don't count on their company. No one is as they seem. And what's the husband hiding with his wife's beauty products? This is for the fingers, this is for the nails. Hidden in the kitchen, right behind the scales. We flick to another war movie. The 7 soldiers read the papers and mail. Between the River Kwai reference and this allusion to the Magnificent Seven, I have reason to believe Eno was on a big-time war movie binge. He makes a passing comment on the difference between the wars we see in movies, where heroes swing about through creepers, parachutes caught on steeples, versus the real thing. Heroes are born, but heroes die. Just a few days, a little practice, and some holiday pay. We're indifferent to the empirical side of war because our monkey brains just want to see stuff blow up. And we cover our ears at the horrors of war. Mother of God, if you care, we're on a train to nowhere. Please put a cross upon our eyes. Take me, I'm nearly ready, you can take me to the raincoat in the sky. These lines read like they were plucked from Paris 1919. Once you decipher the raincoat thing, Polly Eltz sings this bridge likening God and heaven to Jonah in the belly of the whale. No disrespect to his Dadaist poetry, but when Eno hones in and writes with focused images, man, does his stuff hit. Not to mention the arrangement. This stuff flips channels too. What an ugly key change from the bridge to the in another country with another name verse. Another spy movie. Going back and forth from the pulsar verse to the spiraling guitar accents over the swaying bridge and refrain. It's punchy, lively, and totally kooky. Mother Whale Eyeless might be my favorite mid-70s Eno tune, but the record before and after Tiger Mountain both put up some serious competition. Anyway, I love Mother Whale Eyeless because it's at least 3 songs rolled into one. Who even knows what The Great Pretender is about? The lyrics are the last thing I'm paying attention to. I do really like the production. That takes center stage. The slithering twin guitars, chugging synths, and drum machine drag the listener into the undertow. Eno also sings in a darker manner. I don't think we've heard his lower register at all up to this point. But then it kind of loses me again at the unrelenting cricket choir. I have to admit, it's grating to my ear. It is a major turnoff, but a track like Mass Production. One of my favorite things Iggy Pop ever did. Wouldn't exist without The Great Pretender. Opening up side 2 is Third Uncle. The same subscriber who sent me this copy of Tiger Mountain and Warm Jets, he got me into this band. You've probably heard of them if you're here on this video, Magazine. I can point to you exactly where Magazine got their sound for this real-life LP. They got it from Third Uncle. I hear a lot of Wire in this song as well, like if you threw Pink Flag into a blender and tried to put the songs back together from memory. Did this riff go with this song or this song? I cannot believe that Third Uncle is 5 minutes long. The Great Pretender made every second of its 5 minutes felt. Third Uncle blows past you with the whip-fast, scratchy rhythm guitar from Phil and the excitable noodly bass. And the caterwauling solo over Eno's sing-spoken delivery. The arrangement deliberately swamps the vocal, treating it as another instrument. Oh, God. Put a straw under, baby. I don't care what you think. I don't want the orchestra to sound good. I want it to sound like a 4th grade band concert. It sounds correct this way. I hope to God this makes sense to you. It feels like the pink bunny suit scene in A Christmas Story. On the one hand, you're in the pink bunny suit with the floppy ears. It's hot, it's scratchy. This is the single most embarrassing moment of your life, and you know it as it's happening. At the same time, the Sinfonia's stab at this is so earnest, you can't help but be charmed. I love joy, fun, and whimsy. I can't help it. I love knowing that you're bad at something and doing it anyway. Let's give the Portsmouth Sinfonia a gold star for trying. The True Wheel is a boss-ass new wave song because it's not a perfect circle, the certain ratio, the golden ratio. The True Wheel rolls right along, but as you're listening, you pick up on some jagged element. On paper, The True Wheel is a standard rock and roll song. 4/4 time, 3 chords. But each chord gets 1 bar. In that 4/4, the 3-chord cycle on top of the 4 bars means it only matches up again at the 12th bar, not the 4th like your brain wants it to. Apparently Eno heard the lyrics and that hook, "We are the 801, we are the central shaft," in a dream as he was hopped up on mescaline. I don't know. It's oozing with personality, punchy piano, a 1-note guitar solo that gradually winds up in pitch. The drums in the coda are fabulous, as is Eno's delivery.
Uh-oh, nothing there this time.
China My China, the coda to this Taking Tiger Mountain, very loose concept if there is one to begin with. China My China is like a lost Syd Barrett song. Eno's delivery even reminds me of Syd's.
Waving my arms in the air. Love my love. China sits on eternity.
The typewriter chorus is delightfully kitschy. I don't even know how you come up with that. Taking Tiger Mountain doesn't exhale until the very last track, the title track. We have breezy, feathery light guitars and a gentle wind sound effect. We're reaching for the summit of the mountain that's just out of reach. We climbed and climbed. Oh, how we climbed. It's almost ambient. A lead-in to Eno's next project. I touched on this before, how you can place Warm Jets in 1974. You can't do that with Taking Tiger Mountain. This is rock and roll with something wrong with it. Every song on this LP is a conventional rock and roll song in some combination of melody, harmony, rhythm, and arrangement, but it's never all 4. Something's always off-center, like Peter Schmidt's cover. At first glance, these are Warholian screen prints based on Polaroids. When you take a closer look, the pupils of all the eyes are sloppily blacked out. You've got some cross-eyed Enos. That's it! That's Brian Eno in 1974. Cross-eyed rock and roll. Each of these conventions has been socked in the face. Warm Jets did have that same quality, but Tiger Mountain cranked it up. I might prefer this album for that reason, but I do find myself listening to Warm Jets more. It's got more replay value. Both Warm Jets and Taking Tiger Mountain prove how shockingly irrelevant lyrics are to the pop music craft. As long as you have something hooky for the listener to hang on to, you're good. While Warm Jets perfected the offbeat pop craft, it wouldn't make half the decisions Tiger Mountain dares to. And they're only a few months apart. Both make a complete picture of Eno in 1974. The tender post-Roxy, pre-Another Green World time. They reveal Eno discovering his own non-musician musician superpowers. Here Come the Warm Jets and Taking Tiger Mountain prove that Eno does have some special quality about him. He's not just an art school dropout faffing around with pretentious artistic methods, using the studio as an instrument to produce whatever sounds he hears in his head or whatever. Was Eno really a non-musician, as he so fervently claimed in the 70s? Come on, he's a musician. He surrounded himself with people just as willing to put themselves in uncomfortable environments as he was for the sake of the music, as they collectively used that friction to make great work. Regardless of musician or non-musician, Eno did make a path for true non-musicians to go down, to explore, try their hand in a studio, and make some great records for themselves. My personal favorites off Warm Jets are Needle in the Camel's Eye, Baby's on Fire, Driving Me Backwards, On Some Faraway Beach, and some of them are old. My favorites off Taking Tiger Mountain. Oh gosh, this is... Who decided this was gonna be yellow on pink on green? This is a bitch to read. But my favorites are Burning Airlines Give You So Much More, Mother Whale Eyeless, Third Uncle, A True Wheel, and Taking Tiger Mountain. Remember, if you want to hear all of my favorites from all the Vinyl Mondays, I have a Spotify playlist linked in my description. I update it every week. And that's it! That is Eno in 1974. What do you think of Brian Eno? What do you think of Here Come the Warm Jets? What do you think of Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy? Which do you prefer? Leave a comment letting me know. I love hearing what you guys have to say about albums that I love, and remember, despite what some guy on the internet says, your opinion matters. If you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday, Monday mornings at 11, and a new episode of the Dolls podcast every other Friday at noon. And if you so choose, you can become a member of the freaking Peanut Gallery, my Patreon. It gives a little extra support to what I do. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!